to pick up certain things that could just help you and not to pick at it. Because I understand everyone is on a different path to improving, let's say, their English, if that's part your secondary purpose of being a Toastmaster. So, excuse me. So I like to go through a couple things that I noticed just to think about in the future that can help you, right? Hold on. Let me take a step back. The reason why I say this, and I'll piggyback on what you said, is that when you give a speech, the purpose, you want to try as much as possible to keep 100% of that attention to you. As you mentioned, paraphrasing, you don't want people to have to think too much. What does he mean? And sometimes when you're speaking, if your language is wrong, someone in the audience is like, what did that person say? And you've continued talking, and they're still saying, oh, and then by the time they catch up, you've moved on. And if this is happening over and over again, what happens is, in general, they get your point, but at some point in speeches, we're all here to support you, but you're out with people who are not. At some point, they pick up a cell phone and they go, "This person done," right? So improving your language helps a lot to keep people focused. Now, the one thing that I noticed was in many cases, verb tense and pronoun tense didn't match. There was one case, and I can't remember who was speaking, and they mentioned, let's say, for example, bottles. And then in the end, when they refer back to it with a pronoun, they said it. And bottles was plural, so it should have been them or those or something like that, so that it's congruent when you're talking. Another thing is a rule, and I want you guys to remember this. It's really easy. When you say a sentence that ends with he or I, or you're using he or I in a sense like she and I, for example. Sometimes someone will say she or me, or he or I, and you're not sure. The best way to do that is to say, let me take the sentence, if it's, let's say, for example, he and I. What you don't want to do is you want to say the sentence the first time. They gave something to me, or they gave something to I. Which one is right? Right? Me. Right? So then if you're using a sentence where they gave something to her and I, or her and me, what you do is you break it down and you say, okay, which one sounds right individually? The or shouldn't get you confused. Does that make sense? If not, I can explain to you later. But that's a good rule to keep in mind. The other thing that was common was verb tense and missing verbs. In certain cases, as people were speaking, it was one example: I going instead of I am going, or who go at instead of who good at instead of who are good at, right? Small things like that. Keep the verbs in there. Now, in terms of word vocabulary, this is something that ties into our word of the day. Wither was within yours. Okay. One of the definitions, if you look it up for wither, is to lose vitality. Yeah, you didn't know that. It's to lose vitality. But in your case, wither means to become dry or to shrivel from a lack of moisture. The next word that was real good was oxidation. Most of you guys may be familiar with oxidation, but oxidation also has two definitions. One is to combine with oxygen, but the second, which is a more technical term, is to change by increasing the proportion of electronegative parts to a compound. And in your case, that's what you meant. But in general, to sum this up, as I started, I have to commend everyone here. You're doing this in a second language. It's amazing to see this, because if I was in the U.S. and I had to be in Toastmasters in Chinese, and I speak Chinese, I would suck. I do commend you guys. It's a fantastic club, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Jason.